Okay, so now that the video versions of this podcast are available to everyone to watch on YouTube, I'd like to officially introduce you to my humble abode, which has a very, 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 and I mean very, blank wall. As you can see, it is probably the most boring white wall in the history of podcasting. So, anyway, I thought you might get a little crack out of it, but I'd like to explain what I'm wearing on my shirt here, this logo here. If you don't know, it's for the intermission orchestra at UCSD, and that was something I was a part of while in college, and I was serving as the lead tech team coordinator, I guess, of the video projects that we would do. So mainly recordings at concerts, and now that we're remote, basically, we have to do at-home recordings. So I'm helping out even to this day after graduation with that organization. So if you haven't checked them out, I just wanted to give them a shout out. They're the Intermission Orchestra at UCSD, and you can find them on YouTube. And there is an intermission orchestra at Berkeley, believe it or not. But we were the originals. We were the very first intermission. There was a spin-off that someone else from our orchestra did when he transferred to Berkeley. So that's the story behind that. But yeah, just a quick shout out and a quick welcome to the video versions of the podcast, because now they are freely available to everyone. I encourage you to check out all the episodes prior to this one that had special guests, as you can finally see them in person rather than just listening in your earbuds or in the car, wherever you are. Thanks again for listening, by the way. I'm Zach Sabo, your host, and I'll probably roll the intro again, but anywho, this is the podcast. Welcome to the Film Frat Podcast, where we basically talk about anything in and related to filmmaking, but in this episode, it's actually a slight spinoff. It's still something on the creative side, of course, but it's something related to art, and I'm talking about fan art, and I'm talking about animation, and of course, I'm talking about anime too, because they're kind of all tied in a way. The communities of fan art, as in 2D art, you know, not just 2D, filmmaking fan art, because that is a thing. There's fan films, right? Well, fan art is something that's very popular. People are selling their fan art online, and that is something that today's special guest has done. And her name, she goes by Light, or Light of the Deep on Instagram, and she's a good friend of mine. I got to know her pretty well in school. And now she's attending UC Irvine. So I'm really excited to share with you her experience as an artist, both in the fan scheme of things and just in her own time, just drawing. She's a really talented artist. So I hope you guys get to know her well and check out her work on Instagram. I'll put all of the links, of course, to her work in the description of the YouTube video or the show notes of the podcast over at filmfrat.com. So anywho, I'm going to roll that intro and I'll be right back. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
This is the Film Fraternity Podcast, a show that's all about filmmaking in college, so you can turn your student projects into powerful portfolios. And now, here's the host of Film Frat House, Zach Sabo.
All right, and for this episode, I'm just going to jump right into our interview, because I noticed I spend a lot of time doing like pre-talk before interviews, and I'm sure it probably ticks at least one of you guys off. So here you go. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my very good friend and special guest, Light of the Deep. All right, Light in the Deep is in the house. How are you?
Hello, Zach. I'm good. How about you?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. As much as you can do during this time. It's 2021, which doesn't feel a whole lot different from 2020 so far.
Yeah, definitely.
We got a long way to go, but oh wow. Glad to have you on the show. As you know, other people don't know, but we're good friends. And so I'm really happy to have you, because I know you are a talented creative, just like me and a whole bunch of other people. And I know this is, of course, and I know this is mostly like a filmmaking sort of podcast, but in this case, I feel like it's interesting because you kind of delve into some realm of motion picture, but mostly art, and specifically fan art. And I did have a sort of fan filmmaker on the show before, so it's not the first time that I've had someone talk about fan art, if you will. It was more motion picture. But in your case, it's more art, as in static art, drawings, right?
Mhm.
So should you just kind of introduce yourself and to everyone and who you are and what you do?
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Light. I consider myself to be a hobby artist. So artists and everything creative that I do is typically for fun, and I'm not pursuing this professionally in any way, shape, or form. And I typically specialize in fan art, which is like art, which is self-explanatory, but it's like art that isn't original. It can be like something from your favorite TV shows or series or cartoons that you see online.
Great. Wow. Short and to the point. Very sweet. Short and sweet. So I actually found it interesting that you mentioned that it was just a hobby, not as professional. You didn't decide to do it professional. Could you explain that kind of, and like what you really want to do professionally versus what you like to do on the side?
I feel like it's really contrasting feelings that I felt like throughout because I'm currently a fourth year undergraduate student. So in my major is public health policy, and I'm minoring in medical anthropology. In terms like comparison to my hobby, which is like art and a little bit of animation, but more specifically in digital art. I feel like I don't know. I think I personally feel like I wouldn't be able to thrive as much in professional art, mostly because it's a hobby. I like to be able to create things that are under my own personal control.
Mhm.
Whereas if you were to do that as a student or professionally, you'd have to create art like based on like another person's term, which I have taken a couple of art classes in undergrad before,
Mm.
but it wasn't really to my personal taste, but it might have been because it was more like about the historical sense of art, instead of like actually drawing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and some of the best artists actually never went to school. So, it's
Yeah.
really interesting. And it was like, even if they did go to school, they studied something completely different than what they actually did. That's
Mhm.
not just with artists, but like, well, artists across the board, filmmakers, painters, etc. So that's really cool. Um, so what kind of art do you mostly do for those who don't know?
So for I mentioned before that I specifically did digital art, which is art via like programs on a computer or any electronical devices. You can even do digital art on your phone or on your iPad. So for me, I specifically use a pen tablet, which is a device that I use to connect to my laptop in order to draw. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like using like digital programs in order to create art with like multiple different effects. So yeah,
Oh,
like
okay.
art on the like with technology rather than what you would consider as traditional art with like paint, pen and paper, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of stuff inspires you to do what you do? Like, what was that point where you decided, yeah, I'm gonna actually start doing this? Whether, you said it's a hobby, but like, what was that point where you realized I want to keep doing this and create that Instagram page?
I think when I was younger, like probably like early high school stages, like I kind of had like my own personal Instagram account, which is like for me as a person, and like a separate account, which is like for my like hobbies. And I really like just kind of made that in order to distinguish like separate entities, just so I can separate my content. But I feel like I really didn't, it's just a hobby. Like, but then I feel like I wasn't really motivated to continue on with it until like I started getting like a lot of feedback. And there's this thing on a lot of different social media contents where it's called art reposts. There's a lot of controversy with that, but so what happened is that another repost account basically like reposted my art on their account, which had a huge following.
Hmm.
And so with that, they reposted it under my name. Credit to the artist, it's under Light of the Deep. And so what happened is that their audience was able to kind of find my account and able to like explore more of that content. So I think like being able to share my art with people and having them enjoy it is kind of like what drives me to continue making it.
That's cool. Yeah. And I'm just looking now. I had no idea. As of this recording, you have over 7,000 followers on Instagram, which is a huge accomplishment. So props to you.
Thank you.
Especially as a student right now, which is why I love having students on the show. It's like half the show is helping students get noticed. I like to just like get a sense of what their story is.
Mhm.
So like yours is really interesting that it's something that you pursue with a passion, and that's what's really cool about it. No matter what art program or not that you're in college, you're a student, but you're also an artist, and that's the coolest thing. So so are there any like specific pieces of work you looked at? Any existing kind of content like animations and stuff that you were like, I want to do stuff from that specific series or movie. Like I'm talking
I
about like
think.
the early stages. Like what were some of those pieces
Oh
of
yeah.
work?
So basically, the early stages. So for like as a fan artist, I indulge in what social media people call as fandoms. So basically around that time of like early high school, I was in the Voltron Legendary Defender fandom, which is a Netflix original series.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically that's kind of what I like to say helped me. I don't want to say explode because I don't think I'm super big of an artist, but it did help me like reach my art to other people.
Yeah, yeah, I remember those pieces of Voltron that you did. I think it was because of you that I started watching
Oh,
Voltron in the
really?
beginning. I watched the first season for sure, and I think a few of the second.
Mhm.
Obviously, I didn't finish, and I heard there's some controversy towards the later
There's a lot of
seasons.
controversy, which is kind of like I feel like a lot of the artists that I've met through Voltron, we kind of steered away from it. But I do have some like friends who still do draw Voltron art. But
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
sometimes like even if there are controversies in the series that you like, sometimes like the impact that series still kind of stays with you throughout
mm-hmm.
like your artistic journey. So like I still look at Voltron Legendary Defender as like a really huge like moment of my artistic career, I feel. So I do have great appreciation for that series.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an American animation, which is kind of funny because it has some elements that remind me of Japanese anime.
Oh
And
yeah, definitely.
obviously, anime is also something that probably influenced you. I know we talked about that on an informal basis, but could you talk about how that sort of inspires you too? Because I'm pretty sure it did at some
Oh
point.
yeah, definitely. I like to consider myself as well, I kind of don't like this word at the same time because I feel like it's a little elitist, but like
Mm,
an anime veteran.
mm,
So basically I kind of grew up with it. I want to say like maybe kindergarten, first grade because my uncles are really into anime. So aside from the general like kid shows like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, my first like anime was like Dragon Ball Z and Naruto. So I was really into those series when I was younger. And of course, when you really, really like something, you might want to like indulge in like activities in relation to those series. Like for me, it was fan art. For other people, it could be like writing fan fiction, or it can be like even like filmmaking. Like there's a lot of like what people consider anime music videos, where people would like stitch together some clips and make edits, which are really cool. So
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a few people who've done like Star Wars fan films and stuff like that. There's a whole community just around that as Star Wars fan films. And there's a whole festival just dedicated for that, which is it's so interesting. Like there are actually film festivals dedicated for fan films.
it's crazy.
So
That's
yeah,
also amazing.
yeah, and there's probably competitions I assume for stuff that you do, like drawing and art, like on pen and paper, like you said, tablet, electronic art, digital art. There's a lot of, I assume, competitions and like showcases that you can do for that, right? I
Oh yeah,
assume.
definitely. Similar to like the Star Wars Film Fest, there are a lot of anime conventions, especially here in California. For example, one that I really like is Anime Expo, which is considered to be like one of the biggest anime conventions in North America, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other conventions such as that, there are things like events like art contests, or even like in film, there's like anime music video contests that you can do and like win a couple of prizes. I myself don't haven't like really participated in them. Actually, no, that's a lie. Never mind. I have participated in them in the past. I participated in a SAC anime art contest before,
Mm.
and I think I was one of the winners because that helped me gain a free artist table, like artist alley table at the convention. So I was able to booth with one of my good friends. He made art,
Mm-hmm.
and we were able to sell our art together.
That's really cool. And that's the other thing. Yeah, I mean, we obviously can't go to conventions now, but those
Mhm.
kind of points of contact between like people physically, like not just online, but in person especially, is a place where you can connect with that community and feel
Yeah.
like, "Oh, wow, like I want to follow what you're doing as an artist," you know? And it's
Mhm.
really encouraging because you can like bounce off each other ideas and like encouragement and stuff like that. So that's really cool. And it reminds me about the whole anime thing too. Believe it or not, I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the show, but I dabble in a little bit of anime myself. I remember the first anime I watched was Sword Art Online, which probably wasn't the best intro to anime because there's a lot better anime out there. But yeah, it's really interesting. Like it has a really, really distinct art style. The Japanese art style,
Mhm.
which is, I guess, has evolved over the years.
Well, definitely.
Is there sort of that element that you feel kind of like that influenced your art style? Like, how would you describe your art style?
Um, I feel like by like just looking at my art style, you can tell that it's like an anime art style, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, one of my favorite anime series were Katekyo Hitman Reborn and Fairy Tail, which are two very popular series. And like when you look at my art back in middle school, you can definitely tell they were inspired. But I feel like that this happens to a lot of fan artists too, where they try to like take inspirations off of like other artists, but then slowly they develop to they start to develop their own art styles. Like if you can look at my art back in the seventh grade comparison to now, you can tell that there's like a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like every artist grows to some extent. Like
Mhm.
this, excuse me. There's like not as much. There's growth, is what I'm saying. You know, for every artist, there's something where you have to start, and then slowly over time, you just create that sort of style, and you don't really know what your style is really until way later on. So,
I think definitely that's something that a lot of like younger artists do kind of struggle with, especially like me. I think about this when I reflect on like my path as an artist. I know that a lot of like younger artists like to state that they don't necessarily have a style, and I think it is really hard to distinguish whether or not like you have a specific style. But in my opinion, I think that the style that you're working on, that is your style. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, Even if you can't define it, it's like your own personal style, which I think is nice because if you look at like art, sometimes you can tell who the artist is just based on their style, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's cool because you can be influenced by another artist, but you don't have to feel like you can copy them.
Hmm.
Like you can try and copy them to an extent, but like after that, you start to feel like you're creating your own style from there. And honestly, I've never seen any other artist for sure that has your kind of style that I've seen. So
Or,
that's something right there, you know.
mhm.
So that's where you want to be as an artist, right? To create a unique impression on people. Speaking of anime and conventions and selling things, because I know that you said you had a booth, right?
Mhm.
So you obviously had sold pieces of art that you've done, right? So how does
Yeah.
that work? Like, how did you even get a table? Which is really cool. Like, that's a privilege for every artist who wants to get into that kind of thing. So how does that work?
So usually if you aren't like if you don't get a table through like art contests such as like the Sacrament art contest, usually and traditionally in order to obtain an artist alley table, you would have to sign up online. So it's kind of like imagine like signing up for college classes, right? Everybody wants to get those slots, but those slots are definitely limited, especially if it's like a very, very popular convention. And of course, for those like slots, you have to have payments for them. So it's kind of like a rush to see who gets to obtain a table first. So it's like a first come first serve basis. But
Oh,
there are
okay.
some, yeah, there are some artists. There are some sorry, there are some conventions that do actually have like a portfolio process, which I think one that I can think of is Fanime, which is a convention in San Jose. I do know some friends who have booth there, and it has to be like a huge application process. So they have to look through like your portfolio and just kind of see
Mm.
if you're like fit to sell art there.
Okay. It reminds me a lot about how film festivals work. You have to submit your work, and then it goes through a round of judging, and
Mhm.
so yeah, that's really interesting. But I guess it depends on how big the festival is, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how does commissions work then? So not only do you sell things at the convention, but you do that online as well. So
Mhm.
talk about kind of both methods of kind of selling your art to people.
Yeah, okay, so I'll start off with selling at like artist conventions. I've technically only sold once because it was like my first time and it was a pretty decent time. Unfortunately though, during that time I was sick.
Oh.
So it wasn't, it was during like January, so like winter season, the cold flu got to me. But
Mm.
so what I usually sold were like prints, so kind of like posters that you could put up on your wall. And like my artist alley table partner, she sold like keychains and buttons. So they're like a bunch of little merchandise that artists can sell to other people. And for commissions, it's kind of different. It's more personalized towards the commissioners. So especially like nowadays we're in quarantine and everything is kind of digital. So commissions basically go, the commissioner comes and reaches out to me saying, "Hey, I want to commission you to draw this." It could be fan art like a character from their favorite series, or it can be like their original characters, or like anything of the sort. It just kind of has to follow my personal guidelines on whether or not I can draw them. So it's basically kind of like a business transaction. Like whatever they want me to draw, like I'll draw it for them.
Hmm.
So that's basically how commissions work.
So are they like sort of characters that you can draw, or do they? Yeah. So do they often request characters, or do they often like ask or commission other kinds of art, like landscapes and stuff like that? I assume it's mostly character art, given
Yeah, it's
the.
definitely characters because I specialize mostly in like anime subjects, like anime characters. So it's usually the prices for my commissions in particular are based off of like whether or not they want their piece to be like a bust drawing or like a full body drawing, and
Mm,
also depending on how detailed they want it to be.
okay. Are there different kinds of levels of art that you do besides that? Like you said, the bust or the full body. Are there any other like kind of specifications or add-ons that you can have people do as like an extra thing? Like, what are some of the other things that you sell besides those?
I think like for those commissions, there's definitely additional prices for if they want to have like a really detailed background. Like
Mm,
say for example, the pieces all have different elements to them, and like I guess the more detail to that piece, the more expensive it's going to be, you know? So
mm,
like whether or not they want to have like a forest background or like it's going to be a lot more expensive in comparison to just a blank background to which I make it free because it's blank.
right.
So
And
yeah.
so do you advertise solely on social media for this kind of stuff? You obviously do Instagram, but are there any other sort of avenues that you use to like advertise your work?
Yeah, I use a bunch of different social media platforms. So a lot of the popular ones, like I mostly posted art first on Tumblr, which is like a really, really like I don't think it's as popular now, but
Hmm.
it was really big for fandoms back then. I am also active on Twitter, and most recently, as of quarantine, I'm on TikTok, which is actually my largest platform.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. So you obviously do this, right? So
Mhm.
you draw for people and you draw for yourself. You know, that's often something that we overlook. Like you shouldn't just draw for other people. You should do
Mhm.
what you want to do. But you also do animations. Is that true?
Yeah, I do animations. Like not like as elaborate as if you would see like Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, but just like some fun little animations that you could see on my YouTube channel. It's like
Hmm.
also fan content, so it's like fandom related.
Oh, cool. What's your YouTube channel? I think I briefly remember
Oh yeah,
looking at it
it's
before,
all
but
the same username. Like all of my social media, it's under Me Flat the Deep. So
cool.
yeah.
I'm gonna mention that at the very end too, just so people can go and find your work, because you know, it's important for people to find your work, I feel. Uh, so you do animations. Do you want to like grow that into something? Do you feel like you want to, you know, do more of that, or do you want to stick to what you're doing mostly?
I think I would definitely love to try and experiment more in animation because I guess I'm not a professional in any way. I'm a self-taught animator, so
Mm,
I feel like with my movement, it's kind of like taking drawing and taking it a step further because it's like making your pictures move basically. So there's a lot more time commitment in order to draw animations and stuff. Like one of my most popular animations on YouTube, it's a Deltarune animation,
oh,
which is if you don't know Deltarune, it's like created by Toby Fox, which is the same creator who created Undertale, the game. So
hmm,
that animation in total is around 1 minute and 30 seconds, but it took me around a month to complete.
wow.
So animations are definitely time consuming, way
I
more than
did.
a typical still art would take, you
Oh
know?
yeah, for sure. Like I dabbled a little bit in 3D animation in Blender and stuff, and I know how long that stuff can take. It's insane, especially if you don't have the right computer for it. What software and hardware do you use for your art? You mentioned
Oh yeah.
iPad, but
So
what are
I
some
oh
software?
yeah, sorry. I currently use a MacBook Pro, so it's like a laptop. So I can't really indulge of a lot of the PC programs. So like I feel like I'm a little bit limited, but then again, I only do this as like a hobby, so I don't feel like I need like the super professional applications. Maybe that's kind of limiting my artistic abilities, but we'll see about that. But I feel like it's really nice. The programs that I use are free programs, actually. They are Fire Alpaca and Mediving Paint Pro, which Mediving is actually available for the phone and the iPad, like on mobile as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like free for people to use, even if they don't have a pen tablet like I do. I do use another program called Clip Studio Paint, which is a paid program. But all of these programs are like really nice, and I kind of try to use them like equally. But yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna go find those after we talk and put those in the link in the description of this video. We're gonna have a video version of this, by the way.
Oh
For
yeah.
people who are watching, it's gonna be on YouTube. For people who are listening, I should say, because I'm just starting to release some video versions of the podcast now. So yay! But I'll put the link to all of that that you mentioned in the
Mhm.
description for people
For
who
sure.
want to get started, especially for emerging young artists like us who are in school, either in high school or in college. Do you have any tips for people who are just starting out, especially for those who want to do fan art and animation?
Mhm. I feel like the number one thing that you can do is like, I feel like everyone's gonna tell you this, no matter what. But it's like the number one thing that you should do, which is just practice, just plain out practice. Because obviously you're not gonna get better overnight. It's gonna be like a super long process. Because for me, I guess when I think about my experiences, I don't think I was ever really satisfied with the way that my art turned out until last year, actually. I've always been experimenting with my art, but I think like nowadays, like I'm more satisfied with it. And I feel like that's something like it's the struggle that like a lot of artists go through. I think especially you too. Like sometimes when you look at your work, like you're not the most satisfied with it.
Mm-hmm.
And like it can definitely be like disheartening to like think about your artwork in a negative way. But I think the number one thing is just to keep going because like you actually never know how much you grow until you look back, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna leave that on a high note. That was great. Thank you so much for talking to me and just sharing a little bit about yourself. I like to showcase all sorts of students, so you've been a real inspiration for me and for other people, I'm sure, who follow you on Instagram and TikTok. Apparently, I didn't know you had a TikTok. That's so great. Thanks, Light, for joining me. And where can people find you? One more time, just one more
Oh,
time.
okay. All of my social media are underneath my username, Light of the Deep. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube.
Great. A lot of platforms. There's no excuse. Perfect. Thanks for joining me, Light. Appreciate it.
Thank
And
you, Zach.
it's always good to talk to you. So,
Of course.
and that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to Light. And I just wanted to leave you guys with something encouraging that coming out of this interview that I thought of afterwards. And it's that you can turn your passion project or that idea that you thought about for a very long time into a business. You can actually monetize your art. And it's crazy thinking about it as a student, especially when you're just creating work and you don't think it's like quote unquote professional enough. Well, what Light has done is basically turned her work into a business. She's turning her whole line of work into a business, basically. She's advertising herself as an artist on Instagram and using that platform as a way to gain more than just followers, but customers for people who want to actually buy busts or different size levels of characters drawn by her. And so I think that's a really cool thing. Just as an artist perspective, whether you're a filmmaker, a 2D artist, 3D animator, you can monetize your art, first of all, but you can create work that means something to people enough for them to want to buy your work. It's crazy thinking about that, but it's true. People will pay for work that you do depending on what you do. In this case, fan art is a very big community out there. I know that. It's a very big community, especially in the anime scheme of things. But what Light has done is very ingenious. It's turning your art into a business. So I want to leave you off with that. Is that whether you're a filmmaker who's in school right now or you're far removed from school, you can create that work that you always dreamed about doing, a passion project or something that you've had partially written and you want to finish that script. Go and finish it and then go ahead and make it into a product because people will want to buy it. Someone will want to buy that to watch your work or just own it like what Light is doing. Again, owning her art. It's basically commissioning, but you're not commissioning as a filmmaker. You're creating it to view at home for a short period of time or to own it on a digital copy. But you can definitely do that. You just need to put in the work and then do it. Find people who will encourage you, surround you with encouragement to finish that project. But then once you do, go ahead and don't just leave it lying in your hard drive. Go and sell it somehow. Find a distributor. And next week, by the way, I'm going to have a very special guest who is going to go all in on the distribution side of filmmaking, and she is a producer. So stick with me next week. Remember, you can subscribe to the Film Frat Podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much everywhere you find podcasts. And stay tuned because there's a lot more content coming. We got our producer friend next week talking about distribution and feature filmmaking. And then the week after that is our Geek Week episode with Grant Cook. Don't miss that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you guys again so much for listening to me talk. It's been a while. Been a long time talking now. Remember that you are gifted, that you are creative, and that you are able. I'll talk to you guys next week.
That's all from this episode of the Film Fraternity Podcast. For more filmmaking tips and tricks you can use on your next project, visit www.filmfrat.com. That's FILMFRAT.com.